This lake breathes, Daddy. Veteran inherits cabin. Uncovers $10 million secret beneath the water. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's begin. The rain had been falling all morning, turning the dirt roads to mush as the wind howled through the trees, bending them like they were made of straw. John Miller, a battle-worn veteran, stepped out of his old, rusted truck and squinted at the dense fog hanging over the lake. It was the kind of place that would have made most people turn around, but not John. He had nothing left, no family, no home, just his loyal dog, Scout, and the promise he had made to his late uncle. A promise to claim the cabin that had been passed down to him, buried deep in the woods. "Let's go, boy," John said as Scout leapt out of the truck, his tail wagging despite the grim weather. The cabin wasn't much, weathered and worn from years of neglect. It sat on the edge of the lake like a forgotten relic. The lake, silent and still, stretched out before them, the mist rising from it like some ancient being taking a deep breath. As John approached the front porch, his boots crunching on the gravel, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this place, something more than just the overgrown path and the quiet solitude. It was as if the lake itself was alive, watching him, waiting. He stepped inside the cabin, the wooden floors creaking beneath his feet as he glanced around. It smelled of old wood and dust, but there was something else too, something faintly metallic, almost like an electrical current running through the air. Scout was already sniffing around, his nose twitching as he explored the small, dimly lit rooms. John moved to the window, pulling aside the heavy curtains. The view of the lake was breathtaking, almost otherworldly. As he stared at the water, a strange thing happened. The surface of the lake, still and calm just moments ago, began to shift. The water moved in rhythmic patterns, like a pulse, as if the lake itself was breathing. John froze, his breath catching in his chest. Was it just the wind? Or was there something more? Scout barked suddenly, snapping him out of his trance. His dog, usually calm and collected, was on high alert, his ears standing up as he looked toward the water. "What is it, boy?" John muttered, but Scout only growled softly, his eyes locked on the shimmering lake. As the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and pine, John couldn't help but feel like something was calling to him from the water. He couldn't shake the eerie feeling that whatever was happening here was no coincidence. It was as if the lake, the cabin, and the land itself were part of a mystery waiting to be uncovered, a mystery tied to something far bigger than he could possibly imagine. And as he stood there, staring at the rippling water, John had a strange, unsettling thought. This cabin, this lake, might not just be his inheritance. It might be the key to something much more valuable than he ever expected. The secret of a lifetime, buried beneath the water, just waiting for him to find it. The wind howled louder that night as John Miller and his loyal dog Scout settled in the cabin. The storm outside raged on, but inside, the small space was warm and quiet, though the air still carried a strange energy. Scout had curled up on the old rug by the fireplace, his amber eyes occasionally glancing toward the window, as if he sensed something the man couldn't. John sat in a chair by the fire, sipping from a mug of coffee, his thoughts wandering back to the strange pulse he had felt in the lake earlier. Something wasn't right. There was more to this cabin than met the eye, and he was beginning to wonder if his uncle had known it all along. John had heard the stories, whispers about the land, the water, and the treasure that might be hidden somewhere. But as he sat in that chair, staring into the fire, he realized there was something much deeper at play here, something that called to him. His mind wandered to the odd sensation he'd felt when looking out at the water earlier. The lake seemed alive, breathing almost, as if it was waiting for something, or someone, to uncover its secrets. He glanced at the window, the mist still rising from the water, and for a moment, it looked like the surface was moving, rippling in perfect, rhythmic waves, as if the lake itself was trying to communicate. Scout barked suddenly, pulling him from his thoughts. The dog's head was raised, ears perked, and his gaze was fixed on the door. John slowly stood, setting his mug down, and made his way over to the window. Outside, The storm was relentless, but there was something else. The lake. It was different now. The mist above the water seemed to glow faintly, like it was alive with some strange energy. John felt a chill run down his spine as he reached for the door handle. "Stay here, Scout," he muttered, opening the door and stepping out into the night. The cold hit him immediately, the wind whipping against his face as he stepped onto the porch. Scout's growls echoed from inside, but John didn't look back. His attention was focused solely on the water. It was quiet now, eerily so, and the glow on the lake had faded. But the feeling remained, as if something was waiting just beneath the surface. He took a deep breath and walked down to the water's edge, his boots crunching on the wet ground. The lake stretched out before him, vast and still, but as he knelt down to touch the water, it rippled. Not from the wind, but from something beneath, something that moved with a purpose. His heart raced as he stood back up. He couldn't explain it, but the lake was alive, and he felt an overwhelming urge to dive into it, to explore what lay beneath. Without thinking, John walked to the old dock that extended into the water. The boards creaked beneath his weight, and the air grew colder, as if the temperature of the lake was drawing all the warmth from the night. As he reached the end of the dock, he looked out over the water, and that's when he saw it. A faint light glowing beneath the surface. It wasn't the moon's reflection, nor was it a trick of the storm. It was something deeper, hidden beneath the water's surface. He didn't hesitate. He jumped into the cold lake without a second thought, his muscles tensing as the icy water enveloped him. The shock of the coldness hit him hard, but he pushed through, swimming toward the glowing light that seemed to pull him in. Scout barked loudly from the shore, but John didn't hear him. His focus was solely on the light, drawing him closer, like a beacon in the darkness. The further he swam, the clearer the light became, until he could make out the shape of something solid beneath the water. A structure. It was an old, submerged building of some kind, its edges worn and weathered by time, but it stood firm, hidden beneath the water for decades, maybe even centuries. As he neared the structure, he noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. The building was not just old, it was intact. And it wasn't just any building. It was a vault. A vault hidden beneath the water, long forgotten by time. He swam closer, feeling his heart race as his hands grasped the cold, metal surface. He could feel the faint hum of energy beneath his fingertips, and as he pushed harder against the door, it creaked open. The light inside the vault illuminated his face, casting an eerie glow over his features. Inside, he found what he had been looking for, the treasure. But it wasn't gold or jewels. No, it was something far more valuable. Papers. Documents that looked ancient, their edges frayed and yellowed with age. He pulled them out of the vault and held them up to the light, his eyes scanning the cryptic symbols and handwriting. This was it. This was the secret his uncle had left him. The secret that had been buried for decades, hidden beneath the very lake he now stood in. As John floated there, clutching the papers in his hands, he realized that this discovery was only the beginning. The vault held more than just treasure. It held the key to a mystery that had remained unsolved for generations, and he was about to uncover it. John Miller's heart pounded in his chest as he swam back to the shore, clutching the ancient papers in his hand. The cold lake water clung to his skin, but the adrenaline coursing through him kept him from feeling it. He reached the dock, his arms heavy but determined, and pulled himself out of the water, shaking with the effort. His loyal dog Scout was waiting for him at the edge, barking excitedly. "It's all right, boy," John murmured, brushing the wet hair from his forehead as he caught his breath. His mind was racing. What he had just found was no ordinary treasure. The vault hidden beneath the lake wasn't just a relic. It was the key to an unsolved mystery, a mystery that had been buried for generations. With the papers still in hand, he made his way back up to the cabin, his boots heavy on the wooden floorboards. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a thick fog that hung over the lake like a veil. Scout trotted alongside him, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Inside the cabin, John placed the papers on the table and sat down, his mind reeling. The handwriting on the papers was old, faded, and written in a language he didn't understand. It was a mix of symbols and words, cryptic and mysterious. But one thing was clear. The document spoke of a treasure, something far greater than anything he had ever imagined. He didn't know who had written it, but the mention of a vast fortune buried beneath the lake was undeniable. As he ran his fingers over the surface of the papers, he felt a deep sense of urgency. Whoever had hidden this treasure wanted it to remain secret, wanted it to stay buried. But now, with the vault opened and the papers in his possession, John knew that the mystery was far from over. There was more to uncover. As the storm clouds began to part, the moonlight spilled through the cabin's window, casting a pale glow on the papers. John stared at the symbols, trying to make sense of them. He was no expert, but he had learned enough from his time in the military to understand that this wasn't just a random collection of words. This was a map to something hidden, something valuable. But where? He traced the lines with his finger, following the ancient markings. His eyes narrowed as he found something that caught his attention, an X in the middle of the lake. It was the exact spot where he had found the vault. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. The treasure wasn't just beneath the water. It was under the very spot he had swum to. The vault, the light, the strange sensation he had felt all pointed to the same thing. The treasure was still out there, waiting to be uncovered. But how? The question echoed in his mind as he looked down at the papers. He had no way of knowing if the treasure was just gold and jewels or something much more dangerous. But whatever it was calling to him, and he knew he couldn't ignore it. He had to find it, not just for himself, but for the generations before him. They had left him this puzzle, and now it was his turn to solve it. He stood up, his body aching from the cold, but his resolve stronger than ever. Scout barked, as if sensing his master's determination. John smiled and patted the dog's head. "We're not done yet, boy. This is just the beginning." He grabbed his jacket, pulled it tight around his shoulders, and stepped outside. The night air was crisp, and the mist still clung to the lake, but John didn't hesitate. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to stop now. The lake breathed with life, its secrets buried deep beneath the surface. And John Miller was about to uncover them all. The next morning, John Miller stood at the edge of the lake once again, staring out across the still water. The air was cooler now, the mist had lifted, but the feeling of something ancient, something hidden, still lingered in the air. He could hear the faint hum of the water, a sound that seemed to resonate from deep within, like a heartbeat echoing beneath the surface. Scout, his ever-loyal dog, stood by his side, ears perked and eyes scanning the horizon, as if he, too, could sense the presence of the lake's secrets. John had barely slept the night before. His mind had been racing, turning over the papers he'd found in the submerged vault. The symbols and markings on the pages had been clear enough. They were a map, a guide to something far more valuable than just money. But what exactly was it? What kind of treasure could be hidden in a place like this, under the watchful eye of a lake that seemed alive with power? His thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound coming from the woods behind him. He turned, hand instinctively reaching for the old rifle, hanging by the door. But it was only the wind rustling the trees. Still, something didn't sit right. He had to move fast. The discovery from the night before had only raised more questions, and now, with the knowledge that the treasure was right beneath his feet, John felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. Was it worth risking everything to uncover it? He took a deep breath, shaking off the doubt. He had made it this far, and there was no turning back. His uncle's legacy, the mystery of the lake, and the treasure that lay hidden for so many years, it was all meant to be uncovered. And it was his job to do it. John looked down at Scout, who was still alert, standing by his side, as if waiting for instructions. "All right, boy, let's see what we're dealing with." With his dog leading the way, John made his way to the old dock, the wood creaking underfoot as he walked across it. The lake was calm now, its surface smooth as glass, but the earlier pulsing sensation still lingered in the back of his mind. He stepped off the dock and into a small boat that had been left behind in the corner of the dock. The boat was worn, its wood scraped and cracked from years of use, but it would do the job. He pushed off from the shore, the boat gliding silently across the water. As they moved farther from the shore, the lake grew darker, deeper. John's eyes flicked nervously to the surface, but there was no sign of the strange glow from the night before. Still, he knew where he needed to go. The map had pointed him in this direction, right to the spot in the center of the lake. The boat slowed as it approached the location. John's heart raced. This was it. He could feel the pull of the water, like a magnet drawing him closer to something powerful. He looked down, and for the first time, he noticed something in the water, something faint, almost imperceptible. A line of bubbles rising to the surface. They were small, almost invisible, but they were there, coming from somewhere deep below. John's breath caught in his chest. Without thinking, he grabbed a large metal hook that was tied to the side of the boat and tossed it overboard. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for, but he needed to do something. The hook sank into the water, and the boat rocked slightly as the line went taut. John waited, his hands shaking as he gripped the rope tightly. He felt something pulling back from the other end, something heavy, something strong. Slowly, cautiously, he began to reel in the line. The boat swayed with the effort as John worked to pull whatever was caught beneath the surface closer. The tension in the rope grew tighter and tighter until, with a sudden jolt, something heavy broke through the surface of the water. It was a metal door, old and rusted, but unmistakably a door, one that had been submerged for who knows how long. The door was larger than John had anticipated, and it was covered in strange markings, symbols he didn't recognize but somehow felt familiar. This was it. The vault. The treasure was right beneath him. John's pulse quickened as he tied the rope around the metal door, securing it to the boat. He looked at Scout, who was barking excitedly, his tail wagging. "We've got this, boy," John muttered. He could feel the weight of the moment, the legacy of his uncle, the mystery of the lake, the treasure that had been hidden for generations. He wasn't just uncovering a fortune. He was uncovering the past, a piece of history that had been lost to time. John took one last deep breath before beginning the slow process of lifting the vault door. The weight was immense, but he didn't stop. Inch by inch, he pulled, the door creaking loudly as it moved through the water. It felt as if the lake itself was resisting, trying to keep its secrets buried. But John wouldn't let it. As the door finally broke free from the water, he saw it. Inside, in the dim light of the boat, were rows upon rows of metal boxes, each one marked with more of the cryptic symbols he had seen earlier. This was the treasure, and it was far more than he could have imagined. John Miller stared in disbelief as the massive metal vault door swung open, revealing rows of metal boxes stacked neatly inside. The cold lake water still clung to his clothes, but the chill was nothing compared to the shock of what he was seeing. These weren't just old relics or forgotten items. The markings on each box, the faint glow that still seemed to pulse from within, spoke of something far more significant. He carefully reached forward, his hands trembling as he lifted the first metal box from the vault. It was heavier than he had expected, and when he set it on the edge of the boat, the clink of metal against metal sounded louder than he had anticipated. Scout, who had been barking excitedly from the shore, suddenly quieted, his ears flicking back in response to the unspoken tension in the air. John looked at the box, unsure of what to expect. The markings on the surface were more intricate than the ones on the vault door, like some ancient code. He knew he wasn't equipped to understand it, but that didn't matter right now. He was determined to uncover whatever this treasure was, no matter the cost. With a steady breath, he pried open the box, the metal creaking in protest. Inside, there were bundles of paper, old and brittle, stacked neatly in rows. John's heart raced as he carefully unfolded one of the papers. It was a map, but not just any map. This was a map of the very lake he was on, but it had symbols and lines drawn in places John couldn't recognize. He quickly skimmed through the papers, trying to make sense of them, but the more he looked, the more confused he became. These weren't just treasure maps. They were documents, maps, and notes about the lake, the land, and something much older than he had anticipated. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. This treasure wasn't just about money. It was about the lake itself, its history, and something far more powerful hidden beneath its surface. There were references to old wars, secret meetings, and even ancient civilizations. It seemed as though the lake had been a place of significance long before John's uncle had ever set foot there. And now, with these documents, John was beginning to understand just how deep the mystery ran. But there was one more box in the vault. As John reached for it, he felt a chill run down his spine. This box was different. It was larger, its metal surface tarnished with age, and the markings on it were unlike anything he had seen before. It had a seal, an insignia, that seemed familiar but completely out of place. This box was the key. He felt it in his gut. This was the one that held the answers. Carefully, he opened it, the hinges creaking as he lifted the lid. Inside was not paper, not maps, but something far more tangible. A small, ornate chest lay nestled within the box, its surface intricately carved with symbols that matched the ones on the vault door. As John picked up the chest, the air around him seemed to change. The wind picked up, the water rippled, and for a brief moment, the entire world felt like it was holding its breath. This was it. This was the treasure. With shaking hands, he opened the chest. Inside was a small, crystal vial, filled with a dark liquid. The vial shimmered in the dim light, and John could feel a strange warmth emanating from it. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was important. This wasn't just a treasure, it was a legacy, a powerful secret that had been hidden for centuries. As John held the vial in his hands, the weight of the moment settled over him. This discovery was bigger than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just about gold or jewels. It was about the lake, the land, and the history that had been buried beneath the surface. And now, with the vial in his possession, he was the keeper of that secret. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone in this. The strange vibrations he had felt in the water, the sense of being watched, it all pointed to something else. Someone else knew about this treasure, and they were coming for it. John's eyes flicked to the shore, where the mist was beginning to roll in again. The lake was changing, and so was his life. He had uncovered the first part of the mystery, but now he needed to figure out what came next. What was the vial? Who else was after it? And what would happen when they finally met face to face? John didn't have all the answers, but one thing was certain, his life would never be the same. The lake had given up its secrets, but it had also opened up a whole new world of questions. And John was ready to find the answers. John Miller's heart raced as he looked down at the vial in his hand. The dark liquid shimmered faintly in the moonlight, its warmth radiating through his fingers. He could feel the weight of its power, as though it held a secret far greater than anything he had imagined. His mind raced with questions. What was this liquid? What had he uncovered? And more importantly, who else knew about it? Scout was still on alert, his body tense as he paced back and forth near the boat. The hairs on the back of John's neck stood up as he heard a faint noise coming from the woods. His hand instinctively went to the rifle slung across his back, but he didn't move. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, as though something, or someone, was lurking just beyond the trees. He wasn't alone. Slowly, John turned his gaze back to the vial. The markings on the chest, the symbols, the strange hum in the water, everything pointed to this. But what now? He had the treasure in his hands, but it felt like the beginning of something much larger. John knew he couldn't just keep it hidden in the cabin. He had to find out more. But as the sound from the woods grew louder, he realized there was no time to waste. Someone, or something, was coming for it. Without hesitation, John jumped into the boat, clutching the vial tightly. He needed to get back to the cabin, to safety. But as the boat moved through the water, he could see something in the distance, a faint light flickering through the trees. It wasn't just any light. It was too steady, too deliberate. Someone was out there, waiting. John's pulse quickened as he steered the boat toward the shore, his mind racing. He had to think fast. As the boat neared the shore, he heard a rustling behind him. A figure appeared at the edge of the water, a silhouette framed by the trees. It was a man, tall and imposing, his face obscured by a hood. John's grip on the rifle tightened as he prepared for whatever came next. "I know you have it," the man said, his voice low and calm. "You don't know what you found, but I do. And I'm not leaving without it." John didn't answer, his eyes locked on the man. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment hanging between them like a storm, waiting to break. The man took a step forward, his boots crunching in the gravel. "I'm giving you one chance," he continued. "Hand it over, and I'll let you walk away." John's mind raced. The man's words didn't make sense. How did he know about the vial? Who was he? And what did he mean by, "I'll let you walk away"? Something told John that this wasn't just about money or treasure. This was something far more dangerous. He tightened his grip on the rifle, but before he could make a move, Scout growled loudly, his hackles raised. The man froze, his eyes narrowing as he glanced at the dog. "You're not just dealing with a relic, are you?" the man said, his voice low. "This lake is ancient, John, and it holds more than just treasure. You have no idea what you're about to awaken." The words hit John like a slap. He didn't know what the man meant, but he could feel the truth in his words. The lake, the vault, the vial, everything was connected. This was bigger than him, bigger than anything he could have prepared for. "Who are you?" John asked, his voice steady despite the tension in his chest. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the vial in John's hand. "I'm someone who's been watching this lake for years," he said. "Someone who knows its secrets. And now, you're part of it. You don't have a choice." With that, the man lunged forward, but before John could react, Scout sprang into action. The dog barked loudly, charging toward the man with a fierce determination. John swung the rifle up, aiming it at the figure. But the man was fast. He dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding Scout's attack, and disappeared into the trees with incredible speed. John stood there, breathing heavily, his heart pounding. Scout returned to his side, his tail wagging as if nothing had happened. But John knew better. This was only the beginning. He looked down at the vial again, the liquid inside now seeming to glow faintly in the dark. He had no idea what he had just gotten himself into, but one thing was certain. He couldn't turn back now. Whoever the man was, he was right about one thing. The lake was hiding something far more dangerous than treasure. And John Miller had just unlocked its secrets. John Miller stood in the darkened clearing, the eerie silence of the night pressing down on him. The sound of Scout's panting was the only thing breaking the stillness. The strange man had disappeared into the woods, leaving John with nothing but a sense of dread and the glowing vial still clutched tightly in his hand. He wasn't sure what had just happened. The man's warning still echoed in his mind. The words, "You're part of it now," repeating like a mantra. John knew one thing for certain. The lake, the vault, and the vial were all connected to something far bigger than he had ever imagined. He felt the weight of that realization settle over him, like a heavy fog that he couldn't escape. The world had changed in an instant. And now, he was caught in the middle of something that felt both ancient and alive. He had no choice but to keep moving forward. The mysterious man had left, but John knew that would not be the end of it. Whoever he was, he had known far too much. John couldn't just let it go. He had to understand what was happening, what the man had meant by awakening something. The feeling of being watched hadn't gone away either. Every rustle in the trees, every gust of wind, seemed to carry the weight of someone else's presence. He wasn't alone. The strange energy that had pulsed beneath the surface of the lake was still there, lingering in the air. And the vial in his hand seemed to hum with a life of its own, as though it was reacting to something, calling out to something deeper. He turned to Scout, who was now sitting calmly by his side, the dog's amber eyes shining in the darkness. "We need to get out of here, boy," John muttered, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to Scout or to himself. He felt the pull of the unknown, drawing him toward the cabin. But there was no turning back. The man's warning kept playing in his head. "You have no idea what you're about to awaken." John moved quickly, pushing past the trees and back toward the cabin. The night was quiet, too quiet, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was following him. The faintest rustle behind him made his heart race, and he spun around, rifle raised, but the woods were empty. Just the whisper of the wind. He was being paranoid, he told himself. Yet the feeling remained. When John reached the cabin, he locked the door behind him and bolted the windows. Scout immediately laid down near the fire, but John couldn't sit still. His mind raced with thoughts of the strange man and the vial. He needed to figure out what was going on. He spread the papers from the vault across the table again, the strange symbols and maps staring back at him. But no matter how hard he tried, it was like trying to read a foreign language. The map was clear enough, pointing to the lake, but the rest of the markings? They didn't make sense. John's frustration grew, but then something caught his eye, a small piece of paper tucked into one of the folds. He unfolded it carefully, revealing a handwritten note. The writing was shaky, almost frantic, but it was still legible. "They've been watching. It's not just the treasure. The lake is a keeper of secrets. A key. Find it, and you'll unlock what they've been guarding for centuries. But be careful, others are after it. They will stop at nothing to get it." The message sent a chill down John's spine. "Others," he muttered, his heart sinking. Who else knew about this? Who else was coming for the vial? As if on cue, Scout's ears perked up, and the dog let out a low growl, staring intently at the door. John's pulse quickened. Something was out there, and he wasn't alone. He glanced back at the note in his hands, and a sinking feeling filled him. This wasn't just a treasure hunt. This was something much darker, something far older than he had anticipated. The lake was more than just a body of water. It was a keeper of something far more dangerous, something that had been hidden for centuries. John didn't know what it was, but he knew he was involved now. Whether he liked it or not, the secrets of the lake and the vial had chosen him, and there was no going back. The storm outside had picked up again, the wind howling against the walls of the cabin. John sat in the chair by the fire, the warmth of the flames doing little to ease the chill creeping up his spine. He could feel it, the sense that something was coming, something that would change everything. And in the back of his mind, the words of the mysterious man echoed once more, "You're part of it now." The weight of those words settled over him as he stared into the fire, unsure of what the future held. All he knew was that he was about to uncover the truth of the lake. And whatever that truth was, it wasn't going to be easy. John Miller sat at the cabin's table, the faint crackling of the fire breaking the silence. The night outside was turbulent, the wind howling against the wooden walls of the cabin. Scout lay by the hearth, his eyes flicking occasionally toward the door, ears twitching at every sound. John's thoughts swirled around the events of the past few days, the discovery of the vault, the cryptic warning from the mysterious man, and the vial that seemed to hum with power in his pocket. He hadn't yet figured out what exactly he had uncovered, but one thing was clear. The lake was hiding more than just treasure. It was guarding something. The question was, what? As John turned the small vial in his hands, the liquid inside seemed to shimmer with an energy that was both familiar and foreign at the same time. His mind raced, trying to connect the dots. The vault, the ancient markings, the papers, all pointing to this one item. Whatever the man had meant by awakening something, John could feel it deep in his bones. The lake wasn't just a body of water. It was a key to something much larger. As he sat there, the weight of the situation pressing down on him, a sudden knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. Scout barked, leaping to his feet, his fur bristling as the cabin door rattled again. John stood slowly, his hand instinctively going for the rifle that hung by the wall. The knock came again, more urgent this time. "John Miller, I know you're in there." A voice called from the other side. John froze. The voice was unmistakable, rough and low, yet carrying an authority that sent a chill down his spine. It was the same man who had confronted him by the lake. He knew John had the vial. He had to be here to take it. John's fingers tightened around the handle of the rifle. The man had warned him, said others would come for it. And now here they were. "I won't ask again," the voice continued, a slight edge of menace creeping into the tone. "Open the door." John's pulse quickened. He had a choice to make. Open the door and face whatever the man wanted, or defend what was his. He glanced at Scout, who was now growling low, teeth bared, the dog's instincts screaming danger. John's heart raced as he moved toward the door, rifle in hand. He could feel the weight of the vial in his pocket, the weight of the truth that had been buried beneath the lake for centuries. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but he knew one thing. He wasn't giving up the vial without a fight. With a deep breath, he threw open the door. The man was standing there, tall and broad, his dark coat blending into the shadows. His face was obscured by a hood, but John could feel the intensity of his gaze, even from behind the cloak. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension in the air was thick, charged with the threat of what was to come. The man's voice broke the silence. "You don't know what you've done," he said, his voice low and cold. "You've unleashed something that should have stayed hidden." John stepped back, his rifle still raised. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "What's in the vial?" The man's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a grim smile. "You'll see soon enough," he said, his voice dripping with ominous intent. "But I won't let you stand in the way of what's coming." Without warning, he lunged forward, a blur of motion that caught John off guard. But Scout was quicker. The dog sprang into action, leaping at the man's side, forcing him back with a sharp growl. The man stumbled, cursing under his breath as he shoved Scout away. John seized the opportunity, pulling the rifle to his shoulder and aiming it squarely at the man. "Stay away from me," John warned, his voice firm. The man raised his hands in mock surrender, but there was no mistaking the malice in his eyes. "You don't understand," he said, his voice laced with frustration. "This isn't just about you. This is bigger than you or me. You've set things in motion that can't be undone. John felt his grip tighten on the rifle, but his mind raced with questions. What had the man meant by bigger? What had he uncovered in that vault beneath the lake? And why was this man so desperate to take the vial from him? The man took a step closer, his gaze flicking to the vial in John's pocket. You have no idea what that vial holds, he said, his voice almost pleading now. It's not just a relic. It's a weapon. And if you don't give it to me, the consequences will be far worse than you can imagine. John didn't lower the rifle. He was done listening. I'm not giving it to you, he said, his voice unwavering. The man's expression hardened, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something dark in his eyes. Then, with a snarl, he turned on his heel and disappeared into the night, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. John stood frozen, rifle still raised, his breath coming in sharp gasps. Scout growled softly, watching the shadows as if expecting the man to return. But he didn't. The cabin fell silent again. John's heart still pounded in his chest, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The man had been right about one thing. The vial was far more than a treasure. It was something dangerous. And whatever was coming for it, whatever he had just unleashed, John wasn't prepared for it. Not yet. The night had fallen silent again after the strange man disappeared into the woods. John Miller stood at the cabin window, his eyes scanning the darkness, the rifle still gripped tightly in his hand. Scout was by his side, the dog's ears flicking toward the trees, his body still tense from the confrontation. The man's words echoed in John's mind. You've set things in motion that can't be undone, and the vial is a weapon. What did he mean by that? And why did the man want it so badly? John didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just a treasure hunt. He wasn't dealing with mere gold or jewels. Whatever lay within that vial was tied to something far more dangerous, something that had been buried beneath the lake for centuries. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the brink of uncovering something so powerful, so old, that it could change everything. As the wind howled outside, John turned back to the table where the vial lay. It seemed so small, so insignificant, yet it held the key to something far larger. He couldn't help but feel as though he was being watched, an unsettling sensation that crawled under his skin. He had uncovered a secret, but now the question was, who else knew about it? The man had been right. Others were coming for it. John couldn't risk waiting any longer. The vial had already caused enough trouble, and he knew it was only a matter of time before someone else, someone more dangerous, would come looking for it. He had to act fast. His mind made up, John quickly packed the vial away in a small leather pouch, tucking it safely into his jacket. Scout followed him closely as he moved toward the door. The man was gone, for now, but John knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He couldn't stay in the cabin any longer. Not with the danger closing in. He needed answers, and he wasn't going to find them sitting in this old shack. With one last look at the empty room, John stepped out into the cold night. The moon was high in the sky now, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The lake, still as glass, stretched out before him, its surface reflecting the faint light of the stars above. As John made his way down the path toward his truck, he heard a distant sound, faint but unmistakable, the crunch of footsteps on the gravel. Someone was following him. He turned quickly, rifle at the ready, but there was no one in sight. His eyes scanned the darkness, and he felt the familiar tension creep up his spine. Someone was watching him. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice cutting through the stillness. There was no answer, just the rustling of leaves in the wind. Scout growled low, his body tense and alert. John moved cautiously toward the truck, his senses on high alert. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was the man, the same man who had warned him, who had vanished into the woods. His face was still hidden in the shadows, but his presence was unmistakable. "You can't run from this," the man said, his voice calm but filled with an ominous edge. "You've unleashed something, and now you're part of it. You can't walk away." John didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle, aiming it directly at the man. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding. "But I won't let you take what's mine." The man didn't move. He stood there, watching John with an unreadable expression. "You don't understand. he said again, his voice low. This isn't just about the vial. It's about the lake. The power it holds. The secrets it's been guarding for centuries. It's bigger than both of us. John's grip on the rifle tightened. What do you want? He demanded. I want the vial, the man replied simply. But I also want you to understand. You're in over your head. There are forces at play here that you can't begin to comprehend. The lake doesn't just keep secrets, it controls them. And if you don't stop now, you'll never get out. John's mind raced. The lake? The power? What was the man talking about? Before he could ask another question, the man stepped back into the shadows, disappearing into the night just as quickly as he had appeared. John stood there, frozen, his rifle still raised. The wind howled through the trees, and the lake shimmered in the moonlight, as if mocking him. He didn't know what the man meant, but he could feel the truth in his words. There was something more to this, something dangerous. He had no choice but to follow the trail, to uncover the full extent of the mystery. With Scout at his side, John climbed into the truck and started the engine. The road ahead was unclear, but he knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. The vial, the lake, the man. Everything was connected, and John was just getting started. John Miller's truck rumbled down the winding road, the headlights cutting through the fog as he and Scout headed deeper into the heart of the woods. The words of the mysterious man echoed in his mind, like a warning that wouldn't fade. You've unleashed something, and now you're part of it. John didn't fully understand what the man meant, but there was no doubt in his mind that he was right about one thing. The lake was hiding something far more dangerous than treasure. And now, with the vial in his possession, John had become a part of whatever ancient force had been set in motion. He had no choice but to keep going, to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. As the truck bounced over the uneven road, John's thoughts drifted back to the night he had discovered the vault. The feeling of the lake breathing beneath him, the pulsing energy that had almost seemed alive. It wasn't just his imagination. The lake, whatever it was, had been guarding its secrets for centuries. And now those secrets were his to uncover. The truck crept along the forest path, headlights glinting off the occasional reflective surface of the trees. The woods felt darker now, the shadows growing longer as the night deepened. John's grip tightened on the steering wheel as he approached the edge of the forest, where the road began to climb toward the mountain pass. It wasn't much farther now. The man had warned him that he was in over his head, that the power of the lake was something he couldn't begin to understand. John wasn't sure if he believed the man's words, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the lake had chosen him for some reason. As he reached the top of the pass, the truck slowed, the road narrowing as it wound down toward the valley. He wasn't sure what he would find when he got there, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to walk away from this. The night was silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind, the low hum of the truck engine, and the sound of Scout's soft growl in the back seat. Something was out there, watching them. The hairs on the back of John's neck stood up, but he kept his eyes on the road. He couldn't afford to get distracted now. As the truck rounded a bend, John's eyes widened. There, nestled between the trees, was an old, abandoned cabin. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, its wooden frame weathered and decaying. But there was something about it that sent a chill down his spine. This was the place. The map from the vault had pointed to it. This was where the secrets of the lake had been hidden, and where he would find the answers he was searching for. He parked the truck at the edge of the clearing, the engine sputtering to a stop. Scout immediately jumped out of the truck, his eyes scanning the area, his ears twitching at every sound. John stepped out after him, his boots crunching on the gravel as he surveyed the area. The cabin was dark, its windows shattered and boarded up. There was no sign of life, but John could feel something in the air. The sense of being watched grew stronger, and he instinctively reached for the rifle slung over his shoulder. He wasn't sure what he was expecting to find here, but he wasn't taking any chances. As he made his way toward the cabin, he could feel the pull of the lake in the distance. The energy, that strange hum he had felt before, seemed to be stronger here, as if the land itself was alive with it. He paused in front of the cabin, staring at the rotting door, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it. He had come so far, and now the answers were within reach. With a deep breath, John pushed open the door. The hinges creaked in protest, and the darkness inside seemed to swallow him whole. Scout trotted in first, his nose twitching as he explored the old, dusty space. John followed closely, his eyes scanning every corner of the room. There was nothing here but dust and decay. But the air was thick with something else, something that John couldn't quite put his finger on. As he stepped farther into the room, he felt a sudden chill. His breath fogged in front of him, and for a moment, he thought he saw something move in the shadows. Something alive. The feeling was overwhelming, and John's heart began to race. He took another step forward, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the room for any sign of what lay hidden here. Then he saw it. In the far corner, behind a pile of rotting wood and debris, was a small, metal door. It was barely visible, half concealed by the darkness and the wreckage. John's breath caught in his throat. This was what he had been searching for. He moved quickly, brushing aside the debris and pulling open the door. Inside was a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. Without thinking, John descended, his rifle raised, his senses alert to every sound. The air grew colder the deeper he went, the weight of the earth pressing down on him. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, he found himself in a small, stone room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and in the center of the room was a stone pedestal, atop which sat an ancient chest. John stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. This was the source of the power, the secret of the lake. He reached for the chest, his hands trembling as he lifted the heavy lid. Inside, there was a book, its pages yellowed with age. As he picked it up, the ground beneath him seemed to shift. The air grew thicker, heavier, as if something had awakened. And just as John began to open the book, the ground trembled beneath him, and a low, ominous hum filled the air. The ground beneath John Miller's feet trembled again, the low hum vibrating through the air like the pulse of some unseen force. He stood frozen for a moment, the ancient book in his hands heavy with the weight of its secrets. The stone room felt alive, the air thick with an energy that John couldn't explain. His heart raced as the hum grew louder, vibrating in his chest. Whatever he had uncovered, whatever had been hidden beneath the lake for centuries, was awakening. The symbols on the walls seemed to glow faintly, their meanings just out of reach, but their presence undeniable. The pedestal that held the book was carved with intricate patterns, and the stone beneath John's feet seemed to shift with a life of its own. Something in the room had changed. The atmosphere was charged, like the moment before a storm. He glanced around the room, looking for any sign of what was happening, but there was nothing but the shadows, the strange markings, and the unsettling hum that filled the space. John's hands shook as he opened the book. The pages were delicate, fragile with age, but the words inside were written in a language he had never seen before. The characters were foreign, twisting and turning on the page, almost as if they were moving on their own. John couldn't understand them, but he could feel their power. The book was more than just a record. It was a key, and it was telling him something. As he turned the pages, a sudden cold blast of air filled the room, and the hum intensified. Scout, who had been silently watching, growled low and backed away, his fur standing on end. John's senses were on high alert. Something was coming, something that had been waiting for centuries. The ground trembled again, this time more violently. The room seemed to shift, the stone walls groaning as if the very structure of the building was being pulled apart. John gripped the book tightly, his mind racing. Was it the book itself that was causing this? Or was it something else, something beneath the earth, beneath the lake, that had been awakened by his discovery? He didn't have time to think. The rumbling grew louder, and the walls began to crack, small fissures appearing as if the stone was splitting open. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from above. The roof shook, and dust fell from the ceiling, clouding the air. John looked up, his heart pounding in his chest. The light from the chamber above seemed to grow dimmer, as if something was blocking it. The hum turned into a roar, and the air became suffocating, thick with the pressure of something ancient, something powerful, pushing against the walls. And then, in the center of the room, something began to move. The stone floor cracked open, revealing a swirling vortex of light and shadow. It was like a whirlpool, spinning and churning in the air, its edges shimmering with an eerie glow. The temperature dropped suddenly, and John felt a wave of cold wash over him. Scout barked, his fur bristling as he backed into John's legs. The vortex grew wider, its pull strong, as if it were trying to drag them into its depths. John staggered back, his eyes fixed on the center of the room. Whatever was happening, it was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The book, the vial, the lake, it was all connected, and now, it seemed like something ancient was ready to break free. John knew he had to act fast. This wasn't just a treasure hunt. This was a fight for survival. The vortex expanded, its force growing stronger with every passing second. The air was thick with energy, and John felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. He couldn't let this thing escape. He couldn't let whatever was hidden beneath the lake take control. With a deep breath, John took a step forward, holding the book in front of him like a shield. The light from the vortex seemed to react to his movement, swirling faster, the pull intensifying. He had no idea what would happen if he stepped into the vortex, but he knew one thing. If he didn't stop it now, whatever was coming would be unstoppable. The walls of the room shook violently as the vortex continued to grow, threatening to consume everything in its path. John could feel the weight of his decision pressing on him. He didn't know what was waiting on the other side of that vortex, but he couldn't turn back now. He had come too far. He had uncovered too much. With one last glance at Scout, who was watching him with wide, fearful eyes, John stepped into the swirling mass of light and shadow. For a brief moment, there was a flash of blinding light, and then everything went dark. The world around John Miller exploded into blinding light as he stepped into the vortex. For a split second, he felt as though he was being pulled in all directions, a force stronger than anything he had ever known tugging at him, twisting his body through the air. His mind was overwhelmed by flashes of images, ancient symbols, the lake's vast expanse, and shadows that moved beneath the surface. He gasped for air, but there was none. The very atmosphere felt different, charged with an unknown energy. Time itself seemed to stretch and bend. His body felt weightless, floating in the unknown, as if suspended between two worlds. Then, without warning, the light disappeared, and the oppressive silence that followed was deafening. John opened his eyes, disoriented, unsure of what had just happened. His feet were solid once again on the ground, but it wasn't the stone room he had just left. It wasn't even the cabin. Instead, he found himself in a vast, open space, the ground beneath him dark and cracked like ancient earth. The sky above was an eerie shade of red, a color that shouldn't have been there. And the air, thick with the scent of metal and salt, hung heavy around him. Scout was nowhere to be seen. The dog had been with him one moment, and now he was gone. Panic rose in John's chest, but he quickly forced it back. There was no time for fear. The vortex had brought him somewhere, but where? He had no idea. The strange landscape stretched endlessly before him, barren and desolate. Jagged rocks rose from the ground like twisted fingers, and in the distance, a massive, glowing structure stood, an ancient temple or shrine, its shape shifting in the strange atmosphere. John knew he had to move toward it. It was the only sign of life, or whatever passed for life, in this strange place. The ground beneath his boots cracked with every step, and the air felt heavier with each passing moment, the weight of something ancient pressing in on him. The hum he had felt before, the pulse of the lake, was stronger here. It reverberated through the ground, the walls, the very air. The lake wasn't just a body of water. It was a doorway, a threshold to something far older. John's mind raced. The man's words, the warning about awakening something, about being part of it. Was this what he meant? Was this the place the man had spoken of? And what exactly was waiting for him here? As John moved closer to the temple, he felt the unmistakable sensation that he wasn't alone. The hair on the back of his neck prickled, his senses on high alert. His rifle was still strapped to his back, but it felt useless here. Whatever had brought him to this place, whatever lay waiting ahead, was beyond anything he could prepare for. The temple loomed closer now, its surface covered in the same symbols John had seen in the vault. They glowed faintly, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the hum in the air. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the stone, and the moment he touched it, a shock ran through him, like an electric current. A low rumble echoed from deep within the temple, as though the earth itself was waking up. The massive doors of the temple creaked open slowly, revealing a dark interior bathed in an eerie light. Something was waiting inside. John had no choice. He had to go in. As he stepped over the threshold, The door slammed shut behind him with a force that made the ground shake. The air inside was cold, and the smell of old stone filled his lungs. He reached for the flashlight in his pocket, but as soon as the beam cut through the darkness, he saw them. Figures, standing motionless in the shadows, their eyes glowing in the dark. They weren't human, at least not entirely. Their bodies were twisted, elongated, and their features were almost too perfect, like statues brought to life. John's heart skipped a beat. What were they? Were they guardians of this place, or something else? The figures didn't move, but their eyes followed him, and for a brief moment, John felt an overwhelming sense of dread. These were the keepers, the ones who had protected the secrets of the lake for centuries. But why had they brought him here? The hum that filled the temple grew louder, and John realized it was coming from the center of the room. In the heart of the temple, on a raised platform, was a stone pedestal, and atop it rested a crystal, a perfect, clear gem that pulsed with the same rhythm as the hum. The vial in John's jacket vibrated in response. The closer he got to the pedestal, the more intense the vibration became. It was as if the crystal and the vial were connected, and that connection was drawing him in, pulling him toward the pedestal. The figures in the shadows began to stir, their movements slow but deliberate. John stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. As he reached out for the crystal, the air around him grew thick, and the temperature dropped sharply. The hum became deafening, filling his ears, his mind, until he couldn't think clearly anymore. His hand touched the crystal, and in an instant, everything changed. A flash of light filled the room, blinding him for a moment, and when it faded, he found himself standing in the middle of the lake. The water was still, reflecting the stars above, but there was something different about it now. The pulse of the lake was stronger, more alive, and it was calling to him. The vial in his pocket was glowing brightly now, matching the light from the crystal. John realized with a jolt that whatever this place was, whatever the lake had been hiding, he was now a part of it. And the only way to move forward was to face whatever awaited him at the bottom of this lake. John Miller stood at the edge of the lake, the water before him still and dark, reflecting the stars above in a way that seemed unnatural. The vibration in his pocket, the hum of the vial, had never been stronger. It was as though the lake itself had reached out and fused with him, pulling him into its depths, pulling him to the answers that had eluded him all this time. His heart raced as he looked at the water, knowing deep down that he was about to dive into the unknown. The strange symbols, the glowing crystal, the warnings from the mysterious man, it had all led him here. This was the final step, the point of no return. And there was no turning back. The ground beneath him felt alive, thrumming with an energy that surged through his veins. John's hand instinctively went to the vial in his jacket. He could feel the power it contained, the ancient force that had been trapped for centuries, waiting for someone to unlock it. That someone, it seemed, was him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the vial, watching as it glowed brighter in his hand. The vial was reacting to the lake, reacting to the very force that had been hidden beneath the surface. This was what the man had warned him about. This was what had been unleashed. The energy in the air intensified, making the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. It was as if the very lake was watching him, waiting for him to make the next move. He felt the weight of the moment, the weight of the world pressing down on him. And then, without another thought, John tossed the vial into the water. The moment it touched the surface, the lake erupted. The water splashed violently, sending waves crashing against the shore. John stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched the water churn and swirl. The vibrations in the air grew stronger, the hum now deafening, like a roar coming from deep within the earth. He couldn't believe what was happening. The lake seemed to come alive, the water shifting and swirling in ways that defied logic. And then, from the depths, something began to rise. At first, it was just a ripple, a disturbance in the water. But then, as the seconds passed, it became clearer. Something massive was emerging from beneath the surface. John's breath caught in his throat as he realized what it was. The temple, the very structure that had been hidden for centuries, buried beneath the lake, was now rising to the surface. The stone, the symbols, the ancient carvings, it was all there, rising from the water like some ancient giant waking from a long slumber. The lake had not just been a body of water. It had been guarding this temple, this monument to something far older than John could fathom. The water continued to churn as the temple emerged completely from the depths, its massive stone doors creaking open with a sound that echoed through the valley. And standing in the doorway, illuminated by the eerie glow of the temple's light, was the figure of the man who had warned him. He had been waiting, it seemed, for this moment. "You've done it," the man said, his voice soft but filled with an undeniable authority. "You've unlocked the temple. But now, the true test begins." John's heart raced as he took a step forward, unsure of what to do next. The man stepped aside, gesturing toward the entrance of the temple. "Enter, if you dare. But understand this, what you find within will change everything. There is no going back." John felt the weight of the words as they hung in the air. There was no turning back. He had already crossed the line, and now, whatever lay within the temple, whatever secrets were hidden behind those ancient doors, would be his to uncover. He glanced at Scout, who had been strangely quiet, watching him with eyes full of knowing. With a deep breath, John made his way toward the temple, the door creaking open as he passed. The moment he stepped inside, the temperature dropped, and the air became thick with the scent of old stone and dust. The walls were lined with more of the strange symbols he had seen before, but they were different here, more intricate, more alive, as though they were waiting for him to decode them. In the center of the room, on a raised platform, was a large stone pedestal, and atop the pedestal lay a glowing object, its light pulsing in time with the hum of the lake. John knew, without a doubt, that this was the source of the power, the key to everything. He walked toward it, his steps slow and deliberate. As he reached out and touched the object, the room seemed to tremble, the hum growing louder, the vibrations shaking him to his core. And then, the world shifted. The room around him dissolved into a whirlwind of light and shadow, and John was no longer standing in the temple. Instead, he was standing in the middle of the lake once again, the water calm and still. But something had changed. The vial, the object, the power, everything had merged into something far greater than he could have ever imagined. The secrets of the lake were now his, and with them came a responsibility. John Miller had unlocked the mysteries of the lake, but in doing so, he had unleashed a force far more powerful than he could control. The true test had only just begun. In this gripping tale of adventure, mystery, and discovery, John Miller, a seasoned veteran, embarks on a journey that will change his life forever. While exploring the depths of an ancient lake, he uncovers a hidden temple, a powerful artifact, and the secrets that have been buried for centuries. As he unlocks the mysteries of the lake, John is drawn into a dangerous game, where the forces of history and the unknown collide. With the fate of an ancient power in his hands, John must navigate the dangers that lurk beneath the surface. This story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, offering a unique take on veteran stories, where past experiences meet unexpected challenges. As John faces what lies ahead, he is forced to confront the very force he has unleashed, making this tale one of the most thrilling veteran stories ever told. Whether it's the weight of past battles or the new fight against an ancient power, this story encapsulates the struggles and triumphs that come with being a veteran. The mysteries of the lake, the temple, and the vial offer a thrilling exploration of the unknown, blending action, suspense, and the depth of human courage. Join John Miller on his journey and discover why this is one of the most compelling veteran stories that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Through every challenge, John's strength and determination to uncover the truth shine through, making this story a powerful addition to the world of veteran stories.